Hello everyone, Miss Barber here. We're in lesson 1.6 of Algebra 2, Relations and Functions. So a relation, our first vocab word here, it's just a pairing of input values with the output values. So we're used to seeing relations a lot of times like an ordered pair. X is the input, Y is the output. The input values, another word for that, or X's, is called the domain. Output values, you can call that the range. And again, you can also call it y. A function is when the first coordinate, which is the x, the domain, the input, is never repeated, meaning there is exactly only one output for each input, so that you're only mapping input to one output. Again, no repeated x's or inputs. That's called a function. It's a special type of relation that we talk a lot about in algebra. So for example 1, give the domain and range for each relation. So again, domain is just your x values or your input. And then we have to determine if it is a function. So the domain here, sorry, that's the bell, is June, July, August, and September. My input. My output would be my range. So it's going to be these values here on the right. You want to make sure that when you're writing the domain and range out, that you don't repeat values. So I see 82 twice. That's fine. We're only going to write it once though. So 82, 88, and 93 degrees is my range. And then it asks whether it's a function or not. So if it's a function, it means none of my x values, none of my domain were repeated. Never did I repeat any month, so this yes is a function. So yes, it's a function. Now, for number 2, instead of a table, we were given a graph, but we should still be able to do this. So here for number 2, we're going to write out the x values, which is your domain. So my domain is all my x values that I find. So starting here, -4 is my first x value. Then I see -2. And then 0, 2, and 4. That's my domain. Go ahead and see if you can find the range. So the range again would be my y value. So see if you can go ahead and label all of your range values. When you're finished, see if you can say whether it's a function or not. Were any of your x values, your domain, repeated? Pause the video, try it on your own, and then check it against the answer key on the school website. Now for number 3, explain whether each relation is a function. So again, we're always thinking, can my x values or are my x values repeated? My x values, my inputs here are 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't see any repeats of my x's, so yes, it's a function. We're not repeating our x's. All right, number 4, the model of a car to the car's ID number. So this would be my input, my domain, the model of the car. Well, think about it. If you ask your family and friends what kind of cars they have, probably a lot of them have the exact same model. So model is repeated many times over. So this would not be a function. So lots of cars are the same model. So the cars are the same model. All right, and then number 5, the dates James took math tests to his test scores. So again, which one's your input? Your input is the dates that James took those math tests. Well, he probably wasn't taking 2 math tests on the same day, so your dates are not repeated. So yes, this would still be a function. We're not repeating dates. You only live each day one time. So that would be a function. All right, last thing on a graph, another way to figure out if a relation is a function is to use the vertical line test. So if you draw a vertical line and it hits the graph in only one spot, so here we can draw lines, notice it hits the graph only once. So it hits it here or it hits it here. That relation is a function. If you draw a vertical line and you can hit more than one spot on that graph, like here and here, that relation is not a function. So it's pretty easy to tell on a graph if it is a function or not. So use the vertical line test to determine whether each relation is a function. So let's look in number 6. Is there anywhere I can draw a line where it will hit the graph in more than one spot? So I can draw a vertical line many different places, and notice no matter where I draw it, it'll only ever hit the graph in one spot. So yes, this is a function. Number 7, you can draw it some places, like over here on the left, way off to the left here through -3. If I draw it there, I'm only hitting one spot. But if I draw it in other locations, like if I draw it right through here, when x is 0, I actually hit the graph at 3 separate spots. So this will not be a function. And again, there's lots of different points you could choose for why it's not. So this graph hits at the point 0 and then about -3.5. You can call that point down here, right here, whatever you want. And also it hits at the point 0, 0. So again, I have repeated x values. You could go ahead and draw another line and see again, it does hit at more than one spot. Last example is example 8. If I draw vertical lines, again, no matter where I draw it, although this is kind of a crazy looking squiggly graph, I'm never actually going to hit it at the exact same 2 points. So this is called a function. So yes, it's a function, even though it's one maybe we're not used to seeing. So that was the basic introduction into functions, and we're going to be talking a lot more about different types of functions as we continue on.